What's up, guys? Mr. Dan here, back again with another review of an outstanding box set of films from 1980s Hong Kong. This is from 88 Films, The Long Arm of the Law series, parts 1 and 2. And once again, it comes in this rather awkward piece of paper wrapped around the outside, which I will now have to put aside and try not to damage. And I've already opened this up. We see here's a poster, so we'll take a look at that in a moment. And I will show you the contents, and then I will review the first film for you, which I watched last night, which was outstanding, by the way. You see, nice sturdy box. That's some of the cover art from both films. And there you have the cast of the first film, or at least the top 5 are. Maybe the bottom is from the second film. These are the fake IDs. They made fake IDs for themselves, so that's what that is. Okay. So, The Long Arm of the Law, directed by Johnny Mok. And then you have The Long Arm of the Law Saga 2, directed by Michael Mok. And then in the second case, you had the poster. In the first one, you have you see some of the police there. In the first one, you have a booklet. So this is during the time when Hong Kong was part of Great Britain. So there you see the original poster, Red Guards in Hong Kong. A lightning robbery across the border was to be the answer to their dreams. Instead, it was the beginning of a nightmare. Yep, as usual, the plan did not pay off. So there you see the cast and crew of the first one. Apparently a lot of the cast were largely unknown, and a few of them have only made a few films. So of them, the leader not so much, but a lot of the members of the gang are not the most sophisticated in the world. They're not used to big city life. So in some cases there may not have been a whole lot of acting going on. And I think the director, Johnny Mok, talked about that in the interview, which is one of the special features. So, really good booklet, lots of color photographs and behind the scenes information. So yeah, this takes place in the 80s when Hong Kong was still part of Great Britain. You couldn't just freely move about between mainland China and Hong Kong. So in the beginning of the film, they have to sneak their way in. That goes wrong right off the bat, by the way. But let's just read it real quick. In the early 1980s, a band of former mainland Chinese soldiers decide to rob the rich pickings of neighboring Hong Kong. The streets of the British colony echo with gunfire as the local cops contend with these heavily armed crime tourists. A cast of unknowns delivers stunning performances in this true crime tale. Finally, the gang cannot escape the long arm of the law, leading to a fierce showdown within the Kowloon walled city. In this gritty change of pace for producer Sammo Hung, a neophyte director, Johnny Mok, delivers a crime saga of bloodthirsty brotherhood with a real visceral impact. So that's pretty much it. They sneak into Hong Kong. They have some trouble getting in. They do use their fake IDs and they come in during the holiday season. So it's going to be like the Christmas, New Year holiday. So there's lots of really good scenes in malls with Christmas carols in the background and Santa Clauses walking around. But when they go to rob the jewelry store, it turns out that somebody else had already tried to beat them to it and got caught. Some low-level guy. So he's all tied up, and there's a huge police presence there. So they just can't enter everything's closed off while the police are conducting their investigation. And then an eagle-eyed police officer kind of sees them driving by a few times and gets suspicious, so he starts to follow them, and they end up having a chase, and they barely get away, and then they have to just lay low and wait a few more days. And, so their contact isn't too happy about it, because they're going to, I guess, give him the money. He's going to launder the money for them, and then they're just going to go back to China, and he's going to get a percentage or something. Well, he's not too happy, so he says, well, why don't you do me a favor? We'll keep the agreement the way it is, but you got to take care of a little problem for me while you're here. So they have an extra job to do. They got to take care of somebody, if you know what I'm saying. And that's a really good scene. You know, in some of the special effects when people get shot might not be at the highest level, but they're pretty good. And this isn't really an action film. It's not a stunt-filled saga like in the Line of Duty movies, you know, where it's like just, you know, stunts after stunts. There is some action and some chasing and some shooting and some fighting, but again, this one's mostly about the story. So then some of these guys, you know, they're kind of hanging out for a couple weeks. So the big boss says he's going to break his rule and let them mingle with some ladies of the night. And so they go to this fancy club, and that's when you learn that some of these guys are really country bumpkins. I mean, they're amazed at how, you know, to go into a bathroom of a 5-star hotel. I mean, they're just like amazed. You know, there's an attendant in there with a lint roller, you know, helping people, and he's got a tip jar, and the one guy says, the one guy looks and he explains to his friend, "Oh, I get it. It's $5 to take a piss and $10 to take a dump." The other guy's like, "Oh, that makes sense." So they have no idea, you know. And the one guy does have a former girlfriend there who's now working in an industry that's not very pleasant. But they reconnect, and he says, "Well, come back to China with me." And she's like, "I'm too used to this big city life," and that's a drama. So basically, they do the job for their friend, who turns out to be a little bit of a weasel, their contact. Somebody gets an earlobe shot off in that whole interaction. And then now the police are starting to investigate and get involved in things. And because somebody at the mall had a primitive camera, like an actual handheld like film camera, like a camcorder, I guess. And eventually they conduct the robbery. That, as you can imagine, also doesn't go off without a hitch. There's some shooting, there's some chasing, and finally they have to retreat into this Kowloon walled city, which is a place that the police typically didn't go back then. If you ever read about it, it is really a fascinating like city within the city. And the director actually had to go in there several times and talk to some of the residents and sort of get, I don't think he said he got like official permission, but he had to make the individuals that lived in there accepting of them filming in there. And the whole thing leads to a sad conclusion, as you can imagine. A pretty solid crime drama overall. Now, it says here, like, there's a stunning 2K restoration. Okay, I'm not an expert on restorations and things. Just to compare, it didn't quite look as good as the Line of Duty movies or any of the Shaw Brothers movies. Okay? And by the way, it starts out with a gritty kind of a feel to it. That was a style choice by the director. So he wanted to give it almost like a documentary feel in parts. I'm not talking about those parts. As you can tell, when it stops, it changes from that to when the story starts to move along. It does look a lot better. So I'm not talking about the style choices of making it look kind of gritty, like you're watching an old TV. I'm talking about the rest of the film. It didn't look as good as some of the other restorations that I've got, I have to say. It wasn't really distracting or anything, and I'm not, too snobby about any of that anyway. But I would love to hear anyone else's thoughts on that. Anybody that knows more about restorations than I do, how they felt about it. But let's take a look at one more thing. We'll take a look at the poster. If you flip the cover art around, the cover art is just the poster. The other cover art, that's the second film. I think the second one may focus more on law enforcement. There you go, guys. Another outstanding box set, Long Arm of the Law, parts 1 and 2. I'll come back and review part 2 soon. Have you seen this? Have you heard of it? Are you interested in this? Please let me know in the comments below, and I'll be back soon. Thanks a lot. Later.